Welcome to this week's edition of Right on the Money with Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management. I'm Rebecca Powers, and we have dragged Travis back out again by popular demand.
Always happy to be here, Rebecca.
Yes, great. I love what you add to the show with your age, and he is the middle boy. He has 2 sisters above him and 2 sisters below. So we talked about different things like accumulation and tax management, tax planning. Do you have a blueprint to your retirement home? Well, today, being the professor that he is, we have some vocabulary words, and we're going to go down. You're really good at making things simple and easy to understand, Tom.
I hope so. They always say that, well, they say sometimes, though, that an educator takes something that's simple and makes it complicated, but a leader takes something that's complicated and makes it simple, and that's why I try to communicate that way.
Absolutely, and you've been a coach for many years as well, and so active in your church, so you're clearly a leader. And inflation, we've all heard the word a million times on the news. How serious is inflation? Either one of you can take this question when you are this close to retirement, or you're in retirement especially.
Well, from an accumulation standpoint, being 30 years old, that's a little bit more my realm of expertise. Not that I am not an expert in retirement planning, because that is what I do. But for our accumulators, inflation is bad for everyone. There's no good with inflation, and we're experiencing a 40-year high. And if you're in your accumulation phase, I'm about to say a really bad word here, budget. Cut out that unnecessary spending week to week, because I know I don't have kids yet, but I know even for me going to the grocery store, it's painful. I almost feel like you have to take out a loan to buy eggs and bacon right now.
Yeah, it's true.
Even with my dog, her dog food, it is prescription, but not cheap, but a few months ago it was only about $115. Now it's $150. So things are way more or higher priced than what they have been in the past.
And you're engaged, been with the same girl for 12 years.
Yes,
you're about to really start a life together. So smart, they're even talking about having a small wedding. I hope your family knew that, because I'm outing you. All right,
but let me say this. When it comes to the preservation stage or the distribution stage, we're sort of going to play off the accumulation phase and the preservation phase. And I got to speak up for us preservationists and distribution people. It's the same thing. You got to watch what you're spending. But in retirement, I'm not buying a house, so the interest rates usually aren't that concerning for me. But what we are spending in retirement, if you're taking a cruise or you're going on a trip or you're taking an airplane flight somewhere to see grandkids, those things are much higher than the normal 6, 7, or 8% reported inflation. So inflation, you got to understand there's real inflation and core inflation, and we want to win the next election inflation and all kind of things like that. But there's also your inflation, and what things do you spend on? You say, I don't eat eggs. Well, you're in good shape right now, okay? But when it comes to inflation, there's a difference between accumulation and preservation, because you spend things on different things.
Interest rate hikes. You just kind of touched on it. If I'm not buying a house, why do I care about interest rate hikes?
Let me go first.
All right.
I get to go first this time, okay? If your interest rates, if you've already bought your house, unless you have credit card debt that might be on a floating scale, if you're in the preservation or the distribution phase and you're already into retirement or you're really close to it, interest rates shouldn't impact you that much. Where they impact me is they break my heart for my kids who don't have a home yet. Because whereas, when interest rates were 2%, but prices of houses were sky high, prices of houses have come down some, but the interest rates have made the cost so much higher. So it breaks my heart, but it doesn't hit my wallet, interest rates, as much in retirement. What about accumulation?
Well, for accumulators, I got to be honest, it's a very defeating topic trying to save for a home right now, especially living in Southern California. And because the housing market has not corrected as much as first-time home buyers has hoped, it's really not a great time to buy. And the best advice I could really give is be patient, because we do need to wait for interest rates to come back down. But if you buy too early at the wrong time, you're playing at a very high price, but interest rates are high, and if they don't get to the opportunity of being able to refinance within a short amount of time, you know, you could be out of that home before you even get a chance.
Wow. So the next thing on our list, market downturn. You made me realize this a while back. When the market goes down, it's bad, of course, but that also means things are going on sale. So let's talk about the good and bad of the market downturn.
Well, the bad for you in retirement, if you don't really have a plan where you have a bucket that's put away for income that's very conservative, or you've decided to take completely the risk out of that income bucket by securing your lifetime increasing income with some of the plans that we put together for people. The income in your if you're just taking money out of your savings account or out of your investment account, it's a terrible time, because when the market goes down 25%, then everything you're taking out, you're having to take out more shares or more units, or you're having to sell more to get the same amount of dollars. And when you go to the pump at gas, you don't push a button and say, the market's down 25%, so give me a 25% break. You still have to pay full price. And the grocery store and the other things. So if you're taking money out of a retirement account like a lot of people are in the distribution phase, market downturns aren't good.
And it's not good to take money out of, because you have that compounding loss. If you do not have a plan, a blueprint for your home, for your retirement, for the rest of your life, this is the perfect time. During this broadcast, we save about 15 slots, especially for you. Tom, give them that number. Just tell them kind of what that first, it's just a meeting and to get to know each other. There's no pressure at all.
There's no pressure. We don't charge anything for any of our appointments. The first time you come in, we do not ask you anything at the end of that meeting except, do you want us to have a second meeting so we analyze some of the stuff that you brought us? And we want to know who you are and what you want to do and what you've saved for retirement. The whole focus is on you, and we'll ask you a ton of questions. But we'll start when we start to build a blueprint for you based on those questions. When you tell us where you want to go, and then you also show us and tell us what you have set aside to get there, we will then use our expertise to start crafting a plan to get you there. And here's how we craft those plans. Every Monday, all of our advisors, there's 6 of us, we sit down, and it's one person. It's like show and tell. You get up and you show your case. We don't talk about names, but we talk about the case. And these people want to do this, and this is what their goals are, and this is what they have, and this is what I'm looking at to build a plan for them. And one of the advisors will say, have you thought about this? And the other one will say, have you thought about this? And that plan gets crafted and shaped and molded into a really perfect plan, because you've got a whole team of advisors that are putting together a plan if you decide to work with us at Mosley Wealth Management. How do you decide to work with us? Well, you got to go through a process first, but the very first thing is you got to call us. You got to let us know. You got to either go to the barcode that's on the screen and scan it if you know how to do that, or if your teenage grandchild is there and they can show you how to do that, you can work that, or call us. And that's what most of us do. 866-709-1462. You call us, one of our 4 offices in Southern California. They will set you up with an appointment with one of our 6 all-star advisors, and we'll begin to start the building blocks of putting together a plan for you.
Very exciting stuff. Give us a call and stay with us more on how you can retire right on the money.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. We call him the professor here around the station because he always has so much wonderful information. That is what this show is about, to educate and empower you, because they did not teach us any of this in school. We're going to keep moving on. Volatility. We hear it in the news. We hear you should be diversified. What does it really mean when there's market volatility?
Well, from an accumulation standpoint, Rebecca, and we just talked about market downturns and how that's a great buying opportunity for accumulators. You know, I absolutely hate shopping, but my favorite time of year to go shopping is around after Thanksgiving or after Christmas, when there's that big sale sign on all of the stores. Now, talking about volatility, there was a song that the Rolling Stones did a cover on in the 60s called "Time on Your Side." And with volatility as an accumulator, you have time on your side. And that means you have plenty of time to buy when the market is down, because you're probably going to go through a few downturns before you get to those retirement years.
But it always seems to come back.
Absolutely.
You've taught us that historically it will come back.
But volatility, though, from a preservation standpoint, is not a good thing.
No.
I mean, I used to be a youth director in Texas and Indiana, and we would go to amusement parks, and I was the king of roller coasters. I mean, there was not a roller coaster I wouldn't ride. And Magic Mountain in Southern California here was always the best amusement park because they had more roller coasters than anybody else. But I remember about 15 or 20 years ago when Travis was still at home, and I remember I took the kids one day to Knott's Berry Farm. And the name of the ride is called Montezuma's Revenge. And Montezuma's Revenge taught me that I had reached an age that riding a roller coaster was no longer fun. In fact, the rest of that day was no longer fun, if you know what I'm talking about. And in retirement, volatility, so it might be a good buying time for the accumulators, it's a terrible time for those of us who get up and we worry and we look at the market. And a lot of people don't have a plan.
That's right.
So they're sitting there worried about the volatility. And it's not that if you do have a plan, you quit worrying about the volatility. Volatility in the up and down of the market is always scary. But if you do have a plan, you're able to stomach it just a little bit better.
And with the personal relationship, you're always tweaking. It's not a
Right.
set it and forget it like a big box cookie cutter that does that to you. So the word volatility leads us right back to risk. It can be volatile when you're young like you, but as you said, when you get older, that volatility, that's why you have to take the risk out of the picture, and that is where you are so good.
Well, hopefully, by the time you reach retirement, you have a plan. And I'll tell you what a plan does for you. A plan just lays out that, yes, you have enough. So many people come into us, and Travis, you've seen this too. People come in and their biggest question is, we need $2,000 a month and we only have $2 million. Will we make it? And I want to tell them, yeah, if you live to 400 are you going to be in trouble, you know, because that fear of not having a plan. I'll tell you what it does for you. It makes you not enjoy your retirement. If I'm going through the desert and my fuel gauge is broken, and that's the way it is when somebody's going through retirement and they don't have a written plan. Their fuel gauge is broken. They don't really know if they're going to make it or not. So you're just waiting. How long till the next gas station? How many miles to the next service?
Yeah.
And you could be going through the most beautiful desert, and yes, the desert is beautiful in a lot of ways. You could be having the greatest trip in the world, but if you're worried about running out of gas, you're not going to enjoy anything until you see that station. You're not going to enjoy it. And risk can do that to you if you don't know what risk you're taking. And a lot of people come to us, like the person that's got millions of dollars and they're worried about $2,000 a month. And I have to go back to the football game. You've got the game won.
Yes.
But they still think, well, do we need to throw the ball? Do we need to take chances? Do we need to run out of bounds and stop the clock? And they've got the game won, and yet they're still taking too much risk. It's so common that when somebody comes in and we do the risk analysis, they're taking far more risk than they need to be taking. You just need for the game to end, and guess what? You win.
You've won. Enjoy. Because a lot of people, like you've taught me that too. You worry that people aren't really enjoying this hard-earned, wonderful retirement.
Right.
All right, debt. We all know. Benjamin Franklin said it best, a penny saved is a penny earned. We know that. It's so hard to budget. How do you suggest really painlessly getting out of debt?
I'm going to let Travis answer that.
Well, from an accumulation standpoint, you know, everybody throughout life always wants to buy that expensive car that they can't afford, and next thing you know, you got a $700-800 car payment that you have to be on the hook for.
Right.
Now, anytime before you get into retirement and you go through the accumulation years, we need to get you on the right side of zero, because no matter what, if you have debt looming and you do get into that preservation or distribution years, you're going to have to deduct some dollars from your overall assets because that debt needs to be taken care of. And like I said, with depreciating assets, that's really a big management issue. And that big word, budget, you know, making sure you're not spending on any unnecessary things, especially with where we are at with inflation, like we mentioned earlier. But really making sure that you're honed in and controlling those debt and not letting it get out of control.
And it's little things. It's not just a big fancy car. It's Starbucks every day, $7. If you really just for 1 month start looking at what you spend money on. All right, we need to take a very short break, but we're going to talk about Social Security when we come back, rollovers, taxes, how you can save a whole lot of money from Uncle Sam. Let's give that number, Tom, and just kind of tell them what they can expect when they first come in.
Well, the number is 866-709-1462. It's there on the screen, and there's a barcode as well you can scan. But it's like Travis was talking about debt. One of the things that we help people do is if you don't have a spending plan, let's call it that rather than a budget, that's one of the places we start. Because as we've said on this show over and over again, for us to know if you have enough money saved for retirement, we have to know what you have, and we also have to know what you need each month. And to do that, you're going to have a little bit of discipline, a little bit of sitting down and looking at your finances. And I can't tell you how many people come in and we've never looked at a budget. We've never looked at our finances. And well, guess what? It's time to start, because you're not going to have that paycheck anymore. And that's what we help people negotiate, how that you start then being self-employed, because you are self-employed in retirement from your own Social Security and your own pension and your own retirement planning and funds that you put away. And we help you build that so that you can know that, hey, this is what I can spend. And that doesn't mean there's no fun built in. That means we're still going to build in. And you might not be traveling every day to El Segundo or to Temecula to go to work, but you might be traveling every year to Venice or to Athens or to London or somewhere like that. That's okay. We want you to do it. We want you to enjoy it. But we just want you to have the confidence to know that you have a plan that'll last as long as you live and will last as long as a spouse if you're married. So please, you got to pick up the phone and call us, 866-709-1462. We can address these issues we're talking about today, but we can also address the issues that are on your tablet, on your blank sheet when we start writing out what you need in retirement.
Absolutely. As I said before, we were never taught this in school, but it is so important to really take control of your retirement, and it starts today. Give us a call and stay with us. We'll be right back. More with Tom Mosley after this.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter, the one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back to Right on the Money, and we are here with two retirement specialists. Travis, you obviously, it's a family business, and you've done this for almost 8 years. Social Security is a part of your income foundation. When do you turn on Social Security? I know everyone is different, but let's talk about Social Security.
Well, the earliest you can turn on Social Security, Rebecca, is at age 62. But you really need to start planning for Social Security much earlier. And how Social Security calculates what your benefit is going to be is it's based off of your top 35 earning years. So you got to make sure that if you're employed through a company that you're paying those Social Security taxes. If you're self-employed, making sure that you're declaring some of those towards Social Security as well. Now, there's always different retirement issues when it comes to men and women. On average, women have about 8 or 9 years of zeros on their Social Security earning sheet, and that's because they raise the children.
Right.
You know, I look at my mom. You know, she stopped working at about when I was 3 years old and didn't go back to work until I was about 15 or 16. That was to raise my sisters and I, and she made sure we were at every practice and where we needed to be, got us to school, and help from Tom, and you know, getting us breakfast and stuff. And
The toughest job ever.
Absolutely, but you need to make sure, and if you're thinking about retiring, you need to understand that if there's some zeros on your earning sheet, it may benefit you in a really good way to continue working to knock some of those zeros off.
Interesting, and we've said this over and over, and if you remember nothing from this show, remember the difference between a fiduciary independent firm such as the Mosleys and then the big box retailers. That is so imperatively important because you have to look at every single piece, and we've said so many people come in without a plan. How can you build a home? How can you do anything without a blueprint? So we're going to keep moving on to these vocabulary words. Rollovers. Why is that so important in saving you money?
Well, a rollover is important. If you're in the accumulation phase, a rollover is important because you may have left a job and you may have an old 401k that's dormant there. The 401ks are built for accumulation. They're not really built for any kind of preservation, and they're not really built to fit into a retirement blueprint. I mean, they're the lumber yard. They give you the lumber and the doors and the windows and everything, but it still, like you said, needs to have that blueprint to build a house. So if you've moved from job to job, we once had a guy came to us, this was about 5 years ago, and he had 6 401ks. And he's still a client. I joke around with him that, hey, you could get hired, but you just couldn't keep a job, you know, because he had 401ks. Actually, he was highly sought after, and he kept getting bought higher and higher and higher with his income. But he had left those 401ks because he got busy. And it's
Right.
also not uncommon when people come to us and we have an inventory where they start gathering all the things that they have. Oh, I found an old 401k I'd forgotten that I had.
Yes.
It only has $81,000 in it. And I always tell him, Travis will take that. He'll be, if you don't want it, you know.
So I was going to say, I'll take
Yeah,
that.
that's right. So, you know, a rollover is where you take the 401k, and it's only used with the term of a rollover, and you roll money out of that. And most of the time, you roll it into an IRA, an individual retirement account. That, you say, why would you do that? It gives you many, many more options, and you can almost have unlimited options within an individual retirement account, and you can tailor it for you.
I love it, and it's tax advantageous. Speaking of taxes, our great nation is $32 trillion in debt. What does that mean for the average Joe when it comes to what taxes might be one day?
Right?
Well, from an accumulation standpoint, look, we always have someone that every now and then comes into a seminar and they've got some secret about how they don't have to pay taxes. Pay your taxes and make sure you're paying
You
the
know what they
legal
call
amount.
that, don't you?
Yeah, incarceration.
They call it incarceration, that's right.
But you
yeah.
need to make sure you're paying up to the legal amount of taxes as possible. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't ways to reduce your taxes. You know, if you're still in your accumulation phase, if you have a company plan like a 401k, if you contribute to that 401k, you know, you can deduct some of those off of your tax return. Same with an IRA. You know, an IRA does have earning limits as far as that deduction, but if you do fall below those earning limits, you can write off a certain amount if you do contribute to it.
I love it. Okay, Roth conversion. I think you kind of touched on that, right? That's the tax benefit. 3 buckets. It shouldn't be guesswork, a hope and a prayer at the casino if you can retire or not. It is very, very, very important to give your money a job, to know what exactly it's going to do. I love your 3 buckets, so let's talk about that.
Well, when you're in the accumulation phase, you need 2 buckets. You need the emergency fund and you need the growth fund.
Okay.
When you move to retirement and you move to the preservation or the distribution phase, it's really important that you realize you need 3 buckets. You need the emergency fund. Emergencies, life still goes on. And you know, I've asked people before, what's the biggest emergency you've ever had? And the biggest emergency anybody's ever come up with that where they had to have money within 48 hours is like a $17,000 roof that they had to emerge in an emergency. It hadn't rained for 2 or 3 years on their house, it seemed, in Southern California, so it finally rained, and so they had to have a roof. So you need an emergency fund. You still, in most cases, because people are living so long, you need to have money that's still going to grow. You can't turn the engine off and become a glider up there. You've got to still have a little power to grow. Maybe not the risk level of the accumulation phase, but you still need to grow. But when you walk out of your employment, you no longer have the income bucket taken care of by your job, by your paycheck. And so what you need to do is determine, the biggest determination you have to make in building a retirement blueprint is, how are we going to fund the income bucket? Are we going to put enough money for 2 to 4 to 5 years that's in something that's real conservative and just what I call turn the faucet on out of that budget and live off of it for our regular income in addition to Social Security and pensions and things like that? Or, and then, by the way, how do you replenish it? When you have a really good year in the market, and trust me, I know it's ancient history, but we've got a lot of really good years we've had recently in the market, even though the last year, year and a quarter hasn't been that good. But when the market's good, you replenish the income bucket. Or the other way is to ensure that income bucket. If your plan calls for it and you have enough assets to do it, you can insure the income bucket with a fixed income annuity that'll pay you guaranteed increasing income for life. You say, how do I figure out what's best for me? Well, with an open mind, we ask you to call 866-709-1462. And not an open mind as to what phone number. You have to be closed to that phone number, 866-709-1462. But you set up an appointment with one of our all-star advisors. We all follow the same process, although we all have a different starting point and a different ending point. We start where you are with what you have. We end with what you want that to do for you. And we build a 3-bucket plan so that your emergencies are taken care of, your income is taken care of, and your growth is taken care of at a risk level that will allow you to be a member of what we call the Swan Club. Sleep well at night, okay? Because no investment is worth you losing sleep over. But to do all of this, you got to reach out to us and call us. All of our meetings are complimentary, 866-709-1462.
Yep, and no obligation as well. I mean, you have to be a right fit with them, they have to, and vice versa. So it does start with that first step. Give us a call. We look forward to meeting you, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks for joining us.